And we are live. I'm hanging out with my friend Bill Ward. How are you, Bill?
I am amazing. I am doing fabulous right now. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so grateful you're here. I've heard your story before, but for everybody that's listening right now that maybe has not met you yet, can you just introduce yourself and what you do today?
Yeah, my name's Bill Ward. I'm born and raised Calgarian. I'm half First Nations Cree, Nehiyu, and I'm also half white, drug and alcohol addict, and found my way out of the darkness into recovery and relationship with Creator has changed my life, and now I endeavor to just pass it along and try to help anyone else out of the darkness. That's really what my life's about today.
And I love that. And I love that you focus on the spiritual malady because I believe that when I finally, that moment I stopped digging my bottom was when I hit my spiritual bottom, right? I had hit a lot of physical bottoms along my addiction journey, but it was finally when I was done spiritually that I decided to make a change. And that took a lot of work. So for you, what was life like growing up? And, how did your addiction progress? And then when did you hit that moment that you were like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore?
Well, life for me growing up was, I'm like I said, I'm half Cree First Nation, but I grew up in a predominantly white world. I went to a Christian school, and there wasn't many First Nations people. My mom wasn't around when I was young, when I was a young child. She was there when I was an infant, but then I don't know where she went. She had some mental health, maybe some addictions issues of her own. I was raised by my dad for a short while, but he was an alcoholic. So I got given to my grandmother on my mom's side, on my white side. And from a young age, I developed anger. And I probably developed this little underlying issue of abandonment and blah, blah, blah. But then I carried that into my life as a young person, using anger, and then violence kind of became a part of my life. And I used that to navigate life. And being First Nations in a predominantly white world, there's kids are mean, right? And our society, as much as they say that, Canada's a melting pot, there's a lot of prejudice here in many aspects. And I felt that. I had to like fight my way through life. Um, and I remember at about 14 years old, I'm standing at the edge of life going, what's the point anyway? Like life's supposed to be happy, and you're supposed to have all these things and be happy. And I didn't feel happy. But then I found drugs and alcohol, and you know what? Things got a lot better. So I used that for many years through my teenage years as a crutch to kind of navigate what we call the spiritual malady that I had at a young age. I don't think I was full blown alcoholic or addict yet, but I was definitely using it as a solution, a tool to medicate how I felt inside. But then, by the time I was 17, I was in treatment. By the time I'm 22, my life's burnt down. I don't really have a lot of like material things, but I knew I was a hard worker, but I could never keep a job. I couldn't keep relationships, and I was really angry by this point. But I was sick and tired of being sick and tired with the drinking, because drinking just, I could look at the evidence and go, this wasn't working for me, but I couldn't stop drinking. But then I was able to on a prayer, and I say prayer like hesitantly because I didn't care about God. I didn't want to pray. Although I went to Catholic school, I had a bit of a prejudice against prayer and God. But I prayed at 22 years old after a bad night of drinking, and I never drank again ever in my life. But I sat at another turning point, and I'm 22 years old looking at the world again, going, what's the point? So again, the spiritual malady, no more solution of drugs and alcohol, spiritual maladies right there in front of my face. And I looked around the world, and I'm like, how am I going to get happy? And it looked like people with money and things and girlfriends and wives and boats, and looked like these people were happy. And I realized like later on, as I look back at my life, that's what society taught me. And they taught me all these ideals and belief systems and magazines and TV and billboards and other people, peers, they said, get these things and you're going to be happy. So I made it a mission to get those things and try to get happy. And I obtained all those things. I had $1 million house. I was making $3 million a year. I had a beautiful family. I had trucks and boats. But at the end of the day, that stuff never did it either, other than the family and the love and the connection that I had with my daughters and my wife. Those things, looking back, really gave me some joy. But I was always looking for something that I didn't know I could never fulfill that hole inside me with, right? And so I had to burn it down over and over in different aspects of my life.
Now, for you, when was that? Because I know you got sober once, correct? And then ended up using.
Yeah.
And what was that journey like? What brought you to the final, I'm done. I have to get clean and sober.
Okay, so the spiritual malady through my teenage years was medicated with the substances, marijuana, alcohol mainly, and some other drugs, acid, mushrooms, and other drugs. But then once I quit drinking, I still medicated with marijuana, but really my untreated alcoholism or my untreated spiritual malady was medicated through material things. It was medicated through status, through the money, through the obtainment of things outside myself that I thought were going to fix myself. But then after like 15 years of this, I was still angry. When I would close the door and be in a room alone, I was still me. And I was still not doing well. My brother was a missing person in Winnipeg. I had to go look for him with my father. I ended up having to go into a crack house. And when I got into this crack house, to prove that I wasn't a cop, they had asked me to smoke some crack. And I didn't know anything about the illness, like the allergy, the obsession, the spiritual malady. I just went in the crack house and said, yeah, sure. Okay. I'll look for my brother here. I'll smoke that. No problem. Didn't think it was a big deal. Little did I know that I set off the phenomenon of craving, the allergy in my body in that moment. And we did find my brother the next day, but I came back to Calgary that week and I had an obsession to smoke crack. And I hated crack and I never wanted to be a heavy drug user. But I ended up going to find some, because when I look back at all this, Tamar, is I realized alcohol and drugs worked when I was young. Workaholism, status, and all of these material things worked to some degree to give me relief through my younger adult and mid-adult years. But then the shine wore off of that too. And then I found a new solution, which was crack. Something I didn't want to use, but like we know that the powerlessness of this illness is actually a thing. And if I don't medicate my spiritual malady with something stronger than drugs and alcohol, I'll go back to drugs and alcohol, which is what I did. And so I ended up smoking crack for the next 5-6 years. And I actually lost everything. My wife, my kids, my business, my house, my cars, my equipment. My wife and kids ended up living with our old nanny because I was well enough off to have a nanny for a number of years, helped her get her citizenship. She found a man and had kids. And my wife and my 3 daughters had to live in her 2-bedroom house, this little baby house, because I made them homeless. And I'm homeless. The only 2 things I couldn't put in the crack pipe was a travel trailer and a boat, because they were in my wife's name, Shannon's name. So Shannon's mad as hell at me for burning down our lives. She doesn't even know that I'm a crackhead at this point. I had done such a good job at manipulating and hiding it that she just thinks, she doesn't know what to think, really. She knows she's homeless and she knows she's got the kids and she knows that I'm screwed up mentally in the head. And she's mad at me, but my wife really loved me, right? So we're not together. She's resentful. And I reach out to her and I say, can I borrow the trailer that it's in your name? Because I don't have a dime to my name at this point. I'm driving a $500 beater and I got nowhere to live. And she said, yeah, you can borrow the trailer. So I parked that trailer on the foreclosed property. and I plugged into power that I couldn't pay for anymore. And I lived in this trailer and I ate like crackers and Ichiban and potatoes. And finally, I found my way to a meeting because my dad was in recovery for 30 some years at this point. And I asked him if he could take me to a meeting because I was absolutely beaten and I had nowhere to go, had nothing left. I have no more options. I was crushed by my own self-imposed crisis that I could no longer postpone or evade. If I had another $100 in my pocket that day, I don't know if I'd be sitting in front of you, right? So I went to meetings, and that was the blackest my life has ever been. Going through all of that pain, burning it all down, the guilt and the shame. And then out of that blackness came a glimmer of hope where I found a 12-step recovery program. And then I just did what they were telling me to do. And from that point on, I've never looked back. They wanted me to believe in a God or a higher power that I didn't want to believe in, but I had nowhere to go. I had no choice. So I just did what they asked me to do. And lo and behold, I have a life today that I could not even imagine, but it's much different. Because I look back at losing all the things I had to lose, Tamar, and a lot of people say that must have been terrible. That must be terrible. You must regret it. You know what? In some ways, I think I kind of regret it. But in some ways, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I never would have found out who I was truly meant to be without losing everything that I thought I was. Right? And like I have a new lady in my life today, and we were talking last night, and it was really cool because I was telling her, like, you would never have found this version of me unless I went through all that hell. So for me, that hell, seemingly bad, seemingly hell, was actually the greatest gift I ever got. And what ended up happening out of all of that is I have beautiful relationships with Shannon, my ex-wife. She actually asked if she could work the 12-step program for her own mental health, because she tried counselors and therapists and all these things too. After, I'd burnt down her life, she went through a lot of stress and grief. But the 12 steps has helped her more than anything else that she's ever tried. And I was talking to her the other day. She's like, this should be taught in kindergarten. She's like, this shit's changing my life, Bill. And my two youngest daughters have also asked to work the 12 steps. Yeah, they have their own mini issues with drugs and alcohol, and to them, they're not mini issues. They're big issues because it makes their life unmanageable. So they keep asking me for guidance and help. And what I've learned along the way, Tamar, is they're not my kids. They're God's kids. They're Creator's kids. I'm just here to help guide them in the best way that I can. And I can only guide them the best way that I can if I'm healthy myself. And the only way for me to medicate the spiritual malady today is to do things like this, to give my life of service, to pray and meditate to the God of my own understanding. I know a lot of people in recovery aren't big on God or this method, but to me, it's game changer. And I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of alcoholics one-on-one. And my job as a guider is to get them in touch with the authentic truth of who they are, essentially their own higher power, which resides in us. And then they never look back either. And like, I'm going to say this, not to pump my own tires, but for data and facts. Probably 6 out of the 10 people I work with at any given time, they stay sober. And almost every single person that I work with, I get through the 12 steps because I've gotten really good at understanding what the problem is. And the problem never was and never will be the drugs or the alcohol. It is when we first get here. I need to separate myself or them from the substance through the momentum of recovery. But my real job is to get them in touch with this power, with them authentic self, so that they can walk this world and not need a solution like that. And really, I point out what the real problems are and what the solution is to it. And then I build these beautiful relationships with people constantly. And I fall in love with like men, women, in ways that I never really thought was possible, right? And this real journey, this journey with authentic self and with my creator is an experience that I can never really put into words. I'll try my best on these platforms, but love and creator is an experience. It's not something that really can be described, right? As you all know, right? That's kind of where I'm at today.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. So much of what you said resonated with me. And, one of the things is that for myself, complete abstinence has had to be a part of my journey. And I know a lot of people, there's debates about this, but, if I pick up a mind altering substance, I can't stop. I did it with everything. I've done it with food, right? There's certain triggers I have with certain foods. And so, when I stopped for the last time, and it wasn't, we talked about this before we started to record, but for me it wasn't the quitting part that was hard, because I've quit more times than I can even count. It was the staying sober part that was hard, and I had to hit that spiritual bottom where I was spiritually bankrupt in order for me to want to change. And like you said, a lot of people have a problem with the word God or creator, but for me, I felt it wasn't an option. I could either explore that and see where it led me and do what was suggested of me, or I could go back to the life that I was living, and I'm sure my bottom would have been much, much deeper than it was when I actually ended up quitting. So for you, what would you say has been really that key to building that foundation in recovery so that you do create resilience and you don't want to go back?
I think the foundation of building my recovery, at first it was the fear and the pain of going back to that old life and the way that I used to feel. And because working through my own program, it had revealed so many positive things in the first year and a half. I knew the solution was within the literature that I studied. And I remember at 2 months in, so before I came into recovery, probably 2 years as I'm burning down my life, there got to a point where I said to my wife, Shannon, I said, look, I'm going to go to church and I'm taking the kids with me. And my wife looked at me like I was crazy because she already knew my stance on that type of thing. She's like, what do you mean you're going to church? What's happening with you? And I didn't know. And I said, I'm going to go to church. So I started going to church. And I bounced around to all these different churches. And even my kids were like, what are we doing, Dad? Why are you taking us to church? Because I had already instilled in them that was weak, right? And that wasn't the direction I was going to raise my kids or live my life. But I believe that that was Creator working in my life, trying to guide me to someplace good so I could stop what I was doing. But I didn't resonate with church, even though I kept going and trying. I eventually stopped because something wasn't clicking. But I remember about 2 months into my recovery journey, sitting in a meeting in a room, and then it just came to me. Whoa. It was like, this is it. This is that church that you were looking for. This is that thing that you've been looking for your whole life. Here it is. And I realized that in the moment, and I was like, this is it. And I was always looking for something. I was born without this one piece, and I didn't know what it was. And then I realized that day, and I never stopped realizing that I found it in the program, in the 12-step program. That piece of myself that I was seemingly born without, I found there. And I found myself there. So as I kind of moved through that recovery process and I find myself, I don't look back, and it's not the fear of using that propels me anymore. It's the God dope. It's the God pulling me. When I say God to anyone listening here, I just mean love and kindness, compassion, doing the right thing, being able to walk in my own skin, being able to be of service to other human beings that I never was before. In our program, it talks about selfish self-centeredness that we think is at the root of our troubles. When I first got here, I didn't think I was selfish or self-centered. I didn't think that was the root of my troubles. It might be the root of your troubles, but not mine. because I'm pretty generous and modest and self-sacrificing, even kind and compassionate once in a while. But then when I really looked at the truth through the inventory processes that we do, I realized a whole bunch of things about myself that I didn't like. And until I admitted I was an alcoholic and addict at the deepest level concession, like the gates of hell had closed on me with a clang, I knew that I was screwed if I didn't do something different. It's the same with these behaviors. Until I accept and acknowledge some of these things that maybe my pride or ego doesn't really want to acknowledge, I have to get rigorously honest and look at the truth of what and who I am, or I can't grow out of it. And even in recovery, like my anger and my lust were an issue in my first year or two. I had to really look at those things, because once I put down the drink and the drug, and this is data I've collected from helping others too, my disease wants out, and it's going to come out through relationships. It's going to come out through sex. It's going to come out through porn, gambling, anger. And I have to acknowledge those other aspects and look at the patterns of those and humble myself. And sometimes it's humiliating to admit certain things, but that's the only way to grow out of it. So I have become, beaten by my own defects of character to the point where they brought me to my knees. And that is where I can find the light out. But today I don't have to be beaten to that point with a lot of these things, because the God or the creator though pulls me along, and I don't want to be like that. And every now and then I still get smacked around by my own bullshit, right? But for the most part, I'm on a different trajectory. Like our book says, my roots have grasped new soil, and I move forward in a good way, and I endeavor to just be the best version of myself I can. And through that, I can be the best father, the best partner, the best worker. Just I can be a good person, but still have these human aspects of me that I have to navigate through, right?
Absolutely. And I'm heading into, year 10, and I'm working on codependency and that food as the drug of choice again. And I think that it's so common with everybody I talk to that has years under their belt now, is that every time something new pops up. But I think that also comes from our willingness to look at the stuff that comes up, because
Yeah.
we're, doing that really solid foundational work in the beginning, I think is key, and continuing to do the things like service, you said, that belief in a higher power, because I certainly have that. And, but we have to evolve, because if we don't, we're just going to use all these other things instead of drugs and alcohol, which really is the same thing. It's going to lead to the same path, right? So I know your favorite topic is the spiritual malady. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's the main issue. For alcoholics and addicts, for sure. But I think in our society in general is the spiritual malady. In regards to alcoholics and addicts, when I help them and I take them through the step work, I don't even really focus on the substance. I focus on the spiritual malady. Well, what does the malady look like typically in a human being? It looks like, anger. It looks like brutal sex conduct, using women or using men. It looks like money. It looks like status. It looks like based all in pride and ego. And really, when I go against the truth of who I am, so inside of me, there's a guidance system. I'm going to call it the GPS, the God pointer system. It's built right into me. But when I go against that, I actually create shame within myself, because the guidance system, and it's based in love, it knows how to guide my life. But because I'm in a society where I'm learning constantly right from the minute I come out of mom's belly, I start getting indoctrinated with ideals and belief systems and way things are supposed to be. But a lot of those ideals and belief systems and concepts, they go against love. The society that I grew up in our Western society, I believe the foundation of our society is based in self. It's based in selfish self-centeredness. And I learned that when I was a kid. Get this for yourself. Do this for yourself. At any cost, be the best hockey player. Be the best soccer player. Get the highest marks. And it doesn't really matter how you get them. Just get them so that you can get this good job, so you can get this right woman, so you can get this right house and this right car, so that you can be happy. And then as I listen to my peers, they're all telling me the same thing. So I build this spiritual sickness that I don't even know that I have. And in many respects, I actually go against the guidance system within me. And the word shame, it actually means, by definition, dishonoring one's own consciousness. So as I live my life, lying, cheating, stealing, thieving, thinking actually that I'm doing a lot of things the right way, because that's what I see other people doing. So when I yell at somebody because they've treated me a certain way and I validate that with my friend, he's like, oh, well, I would have done that too. But really, when I peel the layers back, I know that it's wrong. When I take advantage of a woman and I'm not interested in her and I'm telling her all these lies that maybe I believe at the time, but really when I get rigorously honest and I look at the truth, I wasn't going to be with her. I just wanted another notch in my belt. So really, I can have that false integrity where I have to tell myself a lie so that I can look in the mirror, and actually society validates that lie. So I think it's all okay. But there's deeper issues here, and it's within me. And when we look at most of the physical illnesses that our society has today, I'm going to say a few of them, like, maybe cancer, even anxiety, depression, some of these like fibromyalgia. A lot of these are cause unknown. So I go to the doctor, I get medicated for some of these mental health and physical health issues, but really it's all based in bad spiritual health. But we don't talk about spiritual health in our society. The big focus is on mental health or the physical health. So I go to the doctor, I get the symptoms medicated, but I'm never ever dealing with the root. And the root is I've gone against my own consciousness for so many years. I'm living in a state of continual disturbance and anxiety, just like an animal who's going to get hit by the car on the highway. He goes into fight, flight, or freeze, and then he has to take some action. And then, 10 minutes later, he's grazing in the field and he's forgotten about the incident on the highway. Well, us as a society living in the lower vibration of consciousness based in fear, we're in a constant state of disturbance and frustration and anxiety. And our bodies aren't meant to really be like that 24/7. So we create the chemicals that create the physical illnesses. My brain's in a constant state of disarray, and it creates a lot of these physical illnesses. And I just think that if I move, it's going to fix it. If I get the right woman, it's going to fix it. If I do these things outside of myself, I'm going to be better. But no, I've learned through hundreds of people working with them. And then my best friend has also worked with hundreds, and my own experience, that it's an inside job. Once I do the inside work and I get good on the inside and being authentic with myself, then I can navigate life in a different way, and everything on the outside gets good. There's a saying in our recovery, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. Well, really, the biggest fight is always Tamar in here. But when I first start this recovery journey, it almost seems like the fight's out here. But as I practice this stuff enough, I start realizing that the fight's always in here. And if I fight in here, I'm fighting out here. And if I fight enough out here, I will be fighting the bottle or the crack pipe again. So when the spiritual malady is overcome, and the only way that I found it can be overcome is with a connection with this power, and through prayer, through meditation, through service, it gives me that comprehension of what serenity is. It gives me that priceless gift that no money can buy of my mind is quiet, and I can accept me for who I am. And then in turn, I can accept you. In turn, I'm in this new relationship, and it's just like the most beautiful relationship I've ever been in, because she accepts me for me. I accept her for her. And I've never been in anything really like this. And it's because I'm not the same person. I've actually fundamentally changed based on the inner work that I've done, based on the work that I've done helping others. And I think the biggest gift I've ever gotten is working with other people, because I build compassion for them. I build compassion for myself. I love them. I see what drives their life. It's the same thing that's driving everybody else's life. You know, a desire for sex relation, emotional security, companionship, material security. We're all driven by the same things. But a lot of it is built in delusion based on the society we live in. And even in the society we live in, Tamar, I believe that a lot of the systems, like even social work systems, they're based in fear. They're based in capitalism. They're based in selfish, self-centered foundational motive that our whole society's built in, not in community, common unity. You know, I'll finish with this on this little topic. Back in the days when like the First Nations people roamed this land, the men and the women took care of the elderly and the children, and anything that was taken from land was honored with tobacco, with humility, and nothing was wasted. And the whole community, they took care of each other. No one was better than each other. You know, the warriors went and got the food, and the mothers took care of the camp, and you know, everyone worked together in harmony with the nature. You know, our society today is everyone works individually so that they can grab and take and snatch out of life what they think will make them happy. The only problem is it's based in fear and self, and it doesn't make you happy. Whereas working with love and kindness and the guidance system within us actually gives you that fulfillment and happiness. But we've got it all confused, right? So, you know, that's the spiritual malady. And it's not even everyone's fault. And people don't even know that they're living it, because they're like the fish in the fishbowl that doesn't know they're in water. The fish doesn't know he's in water. And we don't know we're in the malady or living in discontent and disarray. It just becomes the only normal that we know. The greatest gift I ever got was burning down my life, being able to find a path of recovery, because now I can step outside the fishbowl and go, whoa, I don't want that anymore. I want more of this, right? And that's how I met you, right? So,
Yeah, and I mean, being in recovery is a gift. You know, we get these tools that we can use that bring such great self awareness. Self awareness I never had before. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I was pretty selfish, that's for sure. But, you know, because my focus and the reason why I created this summit was because I wanted to help those people in recovery start to really create a life so good for themselves that they never wanted to go back to their old way of living. Because, you know, you and I both know that as you progress in this journey, a lot of people fall off. A lot of people don't make it. Relapse is such a big problem because people experience that gift that first year. They're in that pink cloud, and then that pink cloud pops, almost inevitably for everybody. And that's where you really have to start digging in and working and having that faith and reliance on a higher power. But, what would be some tips and strategies that you could share with those listening?
okay. So the word and community recovery is very broad, right? There's a lot of people in recovery that are just moderate drinkers that just don't want to drink because they don't see any benefit in their life. And then there's a heavy drinker. Heavy drinker can stop or moderate if given sufficient enough reason, but they don't really have the allergy, and they often don't have a lot of the craziness thinking. And I'm going to describe the real alcoholic here. The real alcoholic or addict, we all have an ego. And you know how when you drive your car, anyone who has a car, you just drive and the gas pedal and the motor is just like, but the alcoholic addict has when you go to pass somebody and you hit the gas and you push it to the floor and it goes, whoa, whoa. That is the alcoholic addict mind. We have the over turbocharger ego that takes things to a bit of a different place. And it actually is, to me, a mental illness. And unless I understand I have this allergy and mental illness, I won't accept God or creator wholeheartedly in my life. So, for the people that are moderate drinkers or heavy drinkers and life's just better and you want to, keep living however you want to live your life, that's totally cool. But my main focus in my life is the alcoholic and addict with the turbocharger mind. And I see many people fall off. And you got to remember, alcohol and drugs are taking out about 15% of our population on a continual basis, but the rate of recovery is actually probably less than 2%. So when you snowball these numbers, the manifestation of people getting taken out basically by the spiritual malady that manifests in drug and alcohol addiction, it is snowballing in a big way, which means our society is getting more unhealthy. And if only 2% or less are recovering, we need to change that and figure out the shit that's not working isn't working. But what do I see working? For the real deal alcoholic, most people take God or creator only as a theory. And if God or creator is only a theory, that's a mental defense. And for the addict alcoholic, at some point, we will have no effective mental defense. And what I'm saying is sometimes I can remember with sufficient force what happens when I pick up a drink or a drug. I can remember the turmoil and the tornado that I cause in people's life, and that will give me the ability not to pick up. But what about that time when I have the mental blank spot where I don't think at all? What about then? The thing with me is if I put it in my bloodstream, I'm not drinking to escape anymore. And I might have taken the first drink because I needed the escape, or the powerlessness drove me because my spiritual malady said, you need relief, you need it now. What's the only thing that's given it to you is the drink or the drug, hence powerlessness. What about when I don't have a mental defense? I set off the allergy, and who knows when I come back? My last spree was 5-6 years. So I need a real defense here. And if I just use creator as an effective mental defense, typically most people do, it will one day give way for the insane excuse to pick up a drink. And it's not even that I had the choice in the matter. So really, I think for the person who really wants to grow and stay sober is understanding the illness first of the obsession that's driven by the spiritual malady, and then the allergy that drives me, that I'm not drinking to escape anymore. I'm drinking to overcome a physical craving beyond my mental control. Understanding that step one concept is really important to be able to even begin to accept any other power to help me run my life. Because inherently we will just keep running our lives on the way that we've always done. But if we do, then we get what we've always gotten and we'll pick up the drink. So really understanding that and then moving into what does it mean to turn my will and my life over to this power? What does it say in the literature? I'm going to talk about the big book for a quick second here because I believe that is the best design for living in the world. And I've researched a number of these different programs and different religious approaches and self-help and inventories. And I think the big book is actually the number one way in the world to change your life. In the step 10 is where I actually follow the exact directions if I'm willing to. And if I can identify, you talk about self-awareness, it is all about self-awareness. If I don't have the self-awareness of the things that, my selfishness, my dishonesty, my self-seeking, my manifestations of my selfishness, if I don't have awareness of what they are, I can't be willing to try to change it. And me trying to change it with my own mind, like a lot of CBT does, it's not successful. I need a power in that moment that I'm aware of it, and I need to bring that power in because I need extra power. And I don't know how God or creator works, but I know when I call on the power, it works because there's something out there. And I've proved it in my own life, and I keep proving it in the lives of others. When they build a relationship with that unknown power, they can call on it. And when I talk to other alcoholics, I think this is one of the biggest things to your question. Talking to other people in recovery that have the same mental illness, they can see manifestations of my own selfishness that I can't see. They're able to help me look at the facts, to sometimes face the facts about myself that I don't want to face, to look at the truth that maybe isn't my truth because I can only see things from my own vision of what I've lived my life with. And I need to find some damaged or unsaleable object, some manifestation of self, resentment, fear, dishonesty, because I'm a pro at being dishonest without me thinking I am. And the one thing I've learned about this is the alcoholic addict, and most people, in my opinion, people may combat me on this, but I don't care. Most alcoholics are addicts incapable of honesty on their own. They will rationalize and justify the most errant nonsense to suit their actions or their inaction in their own life. The alcoholic addict life is the only normal one, even in recovery. And it's imperative that we reach out, get takes on our situation, whatever that situation is, and be willing to look at it from somebody else's perspective. And typically, whoever that person is, hopefully they're going to guide me back to that power. And the thing about this is the symptoms of my defects of character or manifestations of self, as if you will, these are just symptoms of the brokenness, of the wholeness of what I should be. And as I go through each circumstance and I follow these procedures, millimeter by millimeter, I'm healing myself with that power. What is this but a miracle of healing? Circumstances made him willing to believe. It's the circumstances that are presented in my life in any moment by moment where I have an opportunity to work on judgment, to work on lust, to work on anger, to work on fear. If I'm aware only, I call on the power, I talk to somebody, I take a different action because I'm used to reacting out of my brokenness. When I can respond out of the wholeness with the help of the power and somebody else, what happens is I heal millimeter by millimeter by millimeter, and I don't need to get in the same pattern of relationships to fulfill me from you. And I'll finish with this. That tradition 7 talks about we're self-supporting through our own contributions, declining outside contributions. I become self-supporting through my own wholeness, through my own contributions of authentic self, but I can only do that with this power. And I become self-supporting through my own self. And I can decline outside contributions that I used to not be able to decline because those are the delusions and those are my codependency issues that I have that make me think I need those things to be happy. But after a while, I realize I don't need that. And I don't need to go around in my life setting boundaries out of the insecurity and the brokenness of who I am anymore, which is what society taught me. Oh, if they cause you pain or grief, just cut them out. Set those boundaries. Those boundaries are set from insecurity. Whatever I resist will always persist. The beatings continue till I learn the lessons. So by following these processes, I heal a little by little by little by little. And then my anger today, Tamar, is almost non-existent. And I say that with grace looking at Creator because he'll teach me lessons if I get too cocky in anything. My lust has been restored to sanity. With grace, I say that again because Creator will actually show me who's the boss. And if I think I'm so self-righteous that I don't have some of these things, he shows me in a quick way, oh yeah, we'll see, buddy. So I say, and I've learned that the hard way too. So now I help people with lust, I help people with anger, I help people with the spiritual malady. And based on all of those and working with this power, they don't want to drink. They recoil from lust and anger and the drink as from a hot flame. They don't want that because they know that it goes against the core of that guidance system. Because really, we just clear out that channel and you get in touch with who you are. You don't want to be anyone else. We don't need to be the actor. We don't need to wear the mask. You ask me how I'm doing, I can honestly tell you if I'm doing shitty today, and you get it, right?
Yeah.
Because you get it, right? That's why we need to talk to other alcoholics who are doing this for real and be able to be vulnerable. Because the last thing I ever wanted to be was vulnerable, because I needed to keep that mask on and hold the edge in case you hurt me with it. But now I know that is the way to sickness. Now I just be vulnerable, and I don't care what you think anymore. Of course I do to some degree, because I want to be respected by my peers to, a good level. But so that's about it.
I love that. And you said something about, we have these people in our recovery that can call us out on things and that can have a fresh set of eyes. And I've always been very fortunate to surround myself with women that have done that. And, at first in early recovery, it would hurt my feelings. I'm thinking, wow, I can't believe they said that. But then the next day it was like, wow, they're right, actually, and they were doing it to save my life and to keep me here. And now anytime, I have amazing women in my inner circle, anytime I do something, because like you said, we're like that, the accelerator, and it's this all in, and I still have it. I have these people in my life now that I can share this with, and I always verbalize my ideas so I don't just run off with them. And I have women they're not afraid to say, Tamar, let's back it up a little bit, right? Or they'll call me out on my BS. And that has helped me so incredibly much in my recovery, is the people that I surround myself with. So one of the things I asked all the speakers was for their superpower, because I believe we are capable of so much more than we think. I mean, if somebody would have declined us, a drink or a drug, we wouldn't have taken no for an answer. So why do we take no for an answer in our personal lives, right? So your superpower was the ability to speak about the disease of addiction one-on-one or in groups, and inspiring people to understand addiction and change their lives. So how did you come up with that for your superpower?
I go to a lot of meetings. I work with a lot of others, and I have been told, and I've seen it within myself, that I have a gift to articulate the spiritual malady and bring it into layman's terms and show people what it is that they're suffering from and how it manifests into the obsession and into eventually the substance. And so as I've been able to show people this and speak about it, I've really honed my skills and my ability in the delivery of this. And a lot of it's through my own life's experiences, right? And also in the lives and experiences of the people I work with. So I see what works and I see what doesn't work, and that is my superpower. And I get asked to speak a lot on the spiritual malady. And there's a line in our literature, it says, disturb them on the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. They then stand a better chance of following our suggestions. And why I believe that's one of the most important lines is because alcoholism isn't me picking up the drink. I disturb people on the question of alcoholism, which is the crazy thinking, their patterns, their pride, their ego, their behaviors. And then they stand a better chance of following and accepting what we have to offer. So I have a lot of people that don't really like me at first, but I'm kind of predicting their lives through my sharing and my speaking. A year or two later, they come to me and they say, okay, I didn't like you, but I need your help now. And I'm like, perfect. So the willingness is there and I'm able to help them. And then I look at the results that I've been getting with my higher power working through me, and the facts are right there. Like I said, 6 out of 10 I'm working with are staying sober, or 7 maybe. Those odds, that's 60% compared to the industry standard of less than 2%. And I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I'm just saying that the directions in that big book, when they're followed exactly, they produce the results that it actually said in the forwards. 50% got sober at once. 75 to 25% with some relapses. That's exactly what I'm getting. And the original manuscript talked about these are directions, directions, directions. So I take it very seriously that they are directions. So, and I want to take this and help people, especially my First Nations brothers and sisters, because they suffer, 500 years of traumatic experience passed through DNA, cellular structure, deep subconscious pain. And I want to help them to the best that I can. And not just them, but I am brown and I do look First Nations. And I know that I ran away from being First Nations my whole life. And that didn't even get revealed till year 6 of my recovery. Like you said, right? We don't stop learning. You're coming up on, you said your 10th year, and you're still digging things up. And I have a firm belief that if you don't keep a clean inner house by working your program solidly through the directions, you need to be able to deal with the shit as the shit comes up through the clean house. Because if you don't, that shit will deal with you, and it will result in a lot of mental health issues, suicide, and a lot of self-destructive behavior. But if you're keeping a clean house, you're ready to deal with that stuff as it comes up. Because as we stay sober and get older, that stuff's coming up, right? And a lot of normal people don't get it. They end up burning down their marriages because of the spiritual malady. They go into the midlife crisis. And what do you normally see? People changing everything on the external of their lives, getting new, younger boyfriends, different cars, moving, taking trips, doing all these things to try to fix what's wrong in them. But the thing with normal people that go through these midlife crises, they don't have the knowledge and the solution that you and I have been so freely given through the blackness and the darkness. So we're really lucky to be in recovery, right? I'm super lucky. I'm so grateful that I'm an alcoholic addict, that I'm able to have a solution. I've met this higher power that I didn't give a shit about. And to meet people like you who are like on the same vibration. And now most alcoholics and addicts who are on this vibration, they can't not give it away. And that's what you're doing. You're just like, here, have what I have. How could you not want this, right? For everybody. And that's kind of, that fulfills us. Everything that we looked for outside of ourselves for all those years, we now find through service and these platforms and spreading this beautiful way of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? Recovery can be messy, like you said. Like when you keep doing the work, you're prepared for all that stuff that's going to come up.
Right.
And this is not a perfect journey, right? I mean, I still take, 2 steps backwards sometimes. I'm like, whoops, okay, we won't do that again. But it's always, I look at all that as an opportunity to continue to grow and to continue to evolve in my recovery, because I never, I don't want to be that person I was in my first year, second year, third year anymore, because I want to continue to grow. I want to keep building this life, and I never want that to collapse. So, Bill, if people want to learn more about, what you do, get in touch with you, follow you on social media, how can they do that?
Okay, thank you for offering that up. And, it's just been a pleasure and an honor to be here. So my website is BILLWARD.life. My Instagram, I have 2. Actually, I have 3. Bill Ward Life, Bill Ward Life First Nations, and the UDR Cast. The UDR Cast is my podcast, which stands for Uncover, Discover, Recover. Also on LinkedIn, I am Bill Ward. So it's my personal LinkedIn. Facebook, it's Bill Ward Changemaker. And I do have a new podcast coming up shortly that will probably be under the Spotify and YouTube under Bill Ward. So basically, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, Bill, I appreciate you so much and what you do, and that you share your story so openly. And of course, I appreciate you being willing to be a speaker for the summit, because you know how much this means to me. And it's just been a gift to be able to get to know you. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you for leading the way in so many ways for so many people, and including me. I learn a lot from you, and you you give me advice and things for free all the time, and I just really appreciate you and what you do for our world, Tamar.
Thank you.
Thank you.